Hello, babes and besties. I'm here. You're wondering, Winnie, that is not New York. You're correct. I'm in South Carolina visiting some family. It's like 78. The sun is shining. I'll take some. I told everyone I'm absorbing it and I'm going to bring it back, okay? I'm here to do another little reading. There's a place where you're not alone. But I also just wanted to show y'all. I have been reading this book, okay? She's good so far. If you like some sci-fi stuff, I would recommend her. And then look at this cutie journal. We love her. It's like one of the best gifts I've ever been given. Okay. Where did I leave off in here? Did I mark the page even? Here we go. It seemed inappropriate to speak of these experiences to anyone. Even the thought of doing so felt somehow irreverent or sacrilegious, and I was also afraid of what others might think of me. The underlying rapture of the experience itself was unmistakable, but there were moments when I was distressed over what I suspected was happening to my mind, and yet I felt a powerful urgency to continue. I had to sit in that chair. It was as though I were being carried along by a shift in the direction of my planet. Now that I have met many others who have had these types of experiences, I realize that mine were fairly typical, even commonplace. Within the context of meditation or deep prayer, once again, I seem to be an ordinary person whose work is to write about his ordinariness, and I wish to share these experiences with you because I am convinced that if you haven't already, you will eventually go through something very similar. There is no reason why anyone should feel guilt or painful self-doubt over what is a natural process of growth. The first surprising thing that happened was that I went through a period of a few weeks during which I felt as though I were being given dictation. It was an internal impression of words rather than a sound. I wrote profusely, especially during or just after my period of quiet listening. I considered the material a combination of thoughts I heard interwoven with my own thoughts. I now believe that my sitting in a chair and listening did not cause what happened. Doing that simply gave form to my decision to hear, and similar experiences can occur, and do occur for others, at any time, under any circumstances, whether one is awake or asleep. Nothing needs to be done in order to experience a radically different perception of reality. It comes the instant it is wanted, and the context in which it occurs does not trigger it. I have also noticed that the manner in which new perceptions come is personally symbolic to the individual. Some people will be told to turn to a book, some will see images, some hear a voice, others will simply have a calm sense of direction with no worded concept attached. In looking back, it does not surprise me that my first lessons came through my pencil. This is the first idea I wrote down, and I wrote it over and over in varying forms for possibly a week. Do what you want, you can't make a mistake. This statement seemed patently absurd, and I argued with it every time it came. I could think of endless examples of mistakes, and surely some further restraint on my behavior was needed than just doing what I wanted. I remember one evening in particular when I was receiving this message again and was objecting very strongly to the concept. I suddenly heard, if you would rather say, do what you really want, you can't make a mistake. Oh, do what you really want is what I had been advising in every book I had written. Was it possible there was no degree of wanting, no shallow versus deep desire, that there was only one will, and that everyone did in fact do what he wanted to, and what he did was precisely what needed to be done in the context of some larger purpose or overall view of his life? I will not pursue this line of thought here because I still, 3 years later, have some difficulty with this concept. It is simply the first thing that came. I will leave it to you to determine if it is helpful. Other thoughts that have come in this manner I have included in the section that follows. No concept is true. A concept is always a partial perception. A good concept simply allows me to see more than before. It will soon be replaced by other words, if words are what is needed that allow my mind an even greater scope. The word God, repeated in stillness and comfort, becomes an anthem which encompasses and constitutes all. I will describe a few other unusual happenings that occurred during meditation or prayer, but I should mention here the second time I made, on a grand scale, the mistake of taking my spiritual program into my own hands, because it happened at about this time. It started when I looked at the activities of my life in terms of benefits and disadvantages. I began adding up the pluses and minuses of everything I did and then eliminating anything that was not clearly beneficial. I stopped running, playing tennis, watching television, eating meat and sugar, drinking alcohol, going to movies, going to parties, and on and on. What didn't occur to me was that nothing in the world is clearly beneficial. No activity looked at in this manner will add up to even so much as an escape from boredom. So many things I thought I could rely on to please me in some way, when examined thoroughly and honestly, failed to hold up. Going out with certain friends, eating certain foods, sleep, exercise, sexual fantasies, physical superiority, professional accomplishments, knowledge, marriage, friendships, psychic powers, even spiritual or mystical experiences as special events. This process of house cleaning continued until one day I was reading a book, another example of the book appearing when the reader is ready, entitled A Course in Miracles. It's actually a set of 3 books, and I realized that it is literally impossible to know in advance what is in your best interest. I slammed down the book and ran to the garden where Gail was watering and shouted, "It is impossible to decide beforehand what is best. Simply can't be done. Vegetarianism is a decision. Let's go to the steaksmith," which we did. Since then, I have resumed doing some of the things I had given up and others have remained discarded, but none of that in itself has any importance. I now believe that neither indulgence nor abstinence has real value. What indicates value is the honest answer to the question, what is this for? Tennis, for example, is not a selfish activity, nor is it unselfish. The question, why am I on this tennis court, points to what is motivating me, and seeing that, I can choose to follow the leadings of harmlessness and peace, and so make of this moment a gift. By this time, I was using the word God in my meditations. It was the only word large enough to fit the presence of what I would sometimes feel. By God, I know I mean at least this much. It is that which is wholly harmless and fair, a presence available to all and in all, which never guides through punishment or force, and which is so vast and so entirely kind that all attempts at description seem merely silly. My next experience came one night after I had called a friend. He lived in another part of the country, and we had not seen each other for over 10 years, but I had thought of him during all of this because of the type of discussions we used to have. I believed I had now come around to some of his views and that we would have much to talk about. The desire to talk to others about deep personal experiences of this sort often contains an apparently innocent denial of the very truth that has been seen. I can't remember a single time that it has given me or others I know who have tried it the satisfaction that it appeared to offer. It is similar to an alcoholic celebrating his New Year's resolution to give up drinking by getting drunk. It is not dangerous. The truth seen will not go away, but it is often only our ego's attempts to capitalize on the very incident that allowed us to see the ego's lack of value. If, for example, a moment comes in which I glimpse the unity of all life, and then I run to a friend and say, in effect, "You'll never guess what happened to me," my behavior denies that I believe he and I have always been together, and all I have of value he has with me. And if I double the mistake by trying to convince him of the truth of what I have seen, I will appear for the moment to lose the beauty I saw. Natural moments of sharing will occur. Natural moments of sharing will occur in their own time, but the excited recounting of a spiritual experience will accomplish what it is intended to. She's flying. The excited recounting of a spiritual experience will accomplish what it is intended to, and if the purpose is to give the appearance of having been singled out and set apart, then the resulting feeling will be one of loneliness and separation, not communication and joining. My conversation with my old friend was horrible. Every idea I presented him, he rejected, and he urged me to read certain writings which would correct my muddy thinking. I finally began agreeing with him in a dishonest attempt to gain the appearance of mutual understanding. Afterward, I was so shaken that I began to doubt the very things I had experienced. I had recognized the possibility that every concept I had was wrong. All day following the conversation, my feeling of confusion and distress grew. That night, as I sat in my chair, I began pleading with God to tell me something, anything, just one simple truth. Now there were books to write and speeches to give, and yet I knew nothing. If I had no idea of what was going on out there, how could I, in honesty, stand before an audience and make statements? Give me just one truth, I begged, and so it went for the entire night. First I would listen, then cry and plead, but nothing seemed to be happening despite my loud desperation. I don't know if you can see him, but Bear is out here too. It's my grandma's other kitty. Anyway, at daybreak, I finally said to God, I'm not going to leave this chair until you tell me something. This is not fair. What am I going to tell these people who have asked me to speak to them? If I must, I will sit here until I die. That's dramatic. What possible purpose would there be in my continuing? Still, no answer appeared to come. Suddenly, I became very tired. I knew I couldn't remain in the chair. I said to God, I'm going over to lie on the couch, but I am not going to leave this room. You must tell me something. I had visions of Gail pushing food under the door and my refusing to eat it. But as I lay there, I became intensely hungry. What was God doing? I was being left with no pride at all, and a very serious situation was becoming funny. I mustered all the seriousness I could and said, I'm going into the kitchen to get something to eat, but I will never leave this house. I will stay here until I die, unless you tell me something. 2 days before, Gail and I had picked up a stray dog on the highway. She had not left my side day or night since then, and she wouldn't go outside or continue eating unless I stayed with her, and yet all the while she appeared to be deeply grieving over her abandonment. Every hour or so she would begin moaning and whining like some lost child. All during this night she had remained by my feet, but either she had been silent or I had not noticed her crying. While I was in the kitchen she indicated that she needed to go outside, and it was then that I first realized that something had indeed happened. When I saw her need, I felt within me for the first time, in memory, the quality of harmlessness. I knew for that instant I was incapable of hurting her, and I immediately took her outside. Before I had thought of harmlessness as merely an absence of certain negative qualities, but this was a feeling of capacity, the capacity to do no harm. I did not retain contact with that feeling for more than a few hours, but that was enough for me to sense the power of true gentleness. I now know that nothing hurtful can stand before it. When I came back into the house, I recognized something else that had been occurring during the night. What I had been asking for was one simple truth. That sounded innocent, the least I could expect, but now I realized my prayer had not included the audiences I had said I needed something to say to, or the people who would read the books I had agreed to write. It was not, please give everyone on this earth one simple truth. If that had been what I had requested and it had been given, who would then need someone with private knowledge to stand before him? There would be no audiences and no need to further books if each person on this earth recognized that God himself was available as his teacher. That day will come. What? All the while I had been listening for a voice. Something far more valuable was being given to me, and throughout the night I had chosen to ignore it. Now it all came back. The pain of doubting everything I had ever thought to be true had been immense, possibly the most shattering experience of my life. I had seen there was no personal basis for knowledge, and there never could be. By himself, no one could be certain of anything, and yet who, in his daily life, looked straight at that fact? Certainly I had not. Yet during this crisis of faith, I had never doubted one thing. There was something that did know. This I had called God and pleaded that he make an exception in my case and in my terms. The entire experience had been the reverse of a suicidal depression or of the feeling of interminable bleak despair I had experienced at other times in my life. Hold on, I'm going to reread that. The entire experience had been the reverse of a suicidal depression or of the feeling of interminable bleak despair I had experienced at other times in my life. During those times, I had still thought I knew something, that reality is uncaring. All through the night, there had been moments when I felt bodily transported to a place where I could see this same struggle again and again. I saw Abraham having bound his son for sacrifice in order to extract an answer from God, on his knees crying, begging God to tell him something, anything. I saw Moses in the desert, waving his hands towards heaven, pleading with God to tell him something, anything, so these people would not think him a lunatic. I saw Mary Baker Eddy pacing up and down her second-floor room, pleading with God, the newspapers of her time screaming that she was mad, and she suspecting they could very well be right.
And then I began to see people I had known and knew now going through this same crisis. Everyone would have to honestly and bluntly face the truth that he had no way of knowing anything, and this for some would appear to be a devastating ordeal. But it would only be the dawning of his mind of an obvious fact. What we know because we are one. In our oneness is perfect knowledge and peace, but in conflict, controversy, and specialness there can be only despair. Even though they may choose to hear it at different times, God speaks to all his children at once. From the time something spoke to me through moving water glass until the end of the times I would sit in a chair and listen was approximately 1 year. It was marked by other spiritual fireworks, few healings, further dictations, 1 or 2 precognitive episodes. It was a time of wonder, and it appeared that the wonder would never stop. But in the 2 years since then, the nature of the work to be done has changed. I've already mentioned one type of mistake I made during that first year. Trying to assume the role of my own guide or teacher instead of continuing to consult, moment by moment, decision by decision, the quiet sense of guidance that had brought me this far. A mistake I may not have mentioned, one that came later in this period, was my assumption that I had advanced spiritually beyond my friends. My evidence for this was that I couldn't talk to them about these new perceptions. The few attempts I made met with blank stares or nervous chatters. My efforts were accomplishing nothing more than to make us all feel comfortable and different from each other, and yet having the old discussions we had always had was now very tedious for me. Most of our conversations seemed no more than an attempt to come to general agreement on what we had all deplored. There can be no true agreement on what is right and wrong with the world, as any discussion in depth will quickly show, but since everyone knows this, we keep our attacks on food, movies, politicians, and football coaches very superficial in order that a fake sense of sharing can be maintained. Without judgment, there would be nothing to talk about, or so it seemed as I would sit there, one moment feeling uncomfortably silent, the next dishonestly joining in the attack on some mutual acquaintance. There appeared no way out except to make new friends and avoid the old, so I began mentally waiting for these people to pass out of my life, but very few passed. What I had not yet seen was that my underlying assumption of what was going on was wrong. There were no differences between me and my old friends. Another person is never a hindrance to spiritual growth. If that were possible, it would refute the essence of every spiritual teaching that has come to earth. Another's mind cannot touch mine without mine touching his. If one of us is terrified, we are scared together, even though we may, and probably will, attribute different causes to our fears and express them in radically different ways. The perception of inequality is simple rejection of responsibility. If I claim not to share in the mental state of those around me, I have lost my only way out. Physician, heal thyself is the open door to immediate freedom. Forgive and be comfortable, and everyone around me sighs with relief, because fear will not continue in the presence of genuine peace. In these last 2 years, the form of my spiritual journey has changed considerably. I have not completed this stage, and so I will not attempt to describe it fully. It is clear to me that I have increasingly been placed in the role of servant, a supporter of other people's endeavors, and it is also clear that in what has otherwise been a bleak and confusing time, I have felt a growing awareness of the presence of one who loves me. It is many long moments before dawn, but a soft light is even now spreading over the earth. I can remember almost the day that what I now think of as a second stage began. It felt as if this friend who had been so much with me had simply walked out. I had been returned to the first grade with a note that read, he must do it all again, but this time without a tutor. Quite the opposite was happening. I was being shown the vast areas where I was not applying the truths I had been given. Here were the places I was deserting my friend, not he deserting me. Now the time had come to begin expanding my little area of sanity. The one tool I had was the recognition that I could accomplish nothing by myself and that I must consult directly the guide who had brought me this far about every further step to be taken. I will come back to this point in a few examples given in the second to last section of this book, but here I would like to detail for you how this process of consultation developed for me. In order to be certain of the accuracy of his decision, one would have to see the circumstances involved without distortion. He would have to foresee all the consequences of his actions, and he would have to know everyone his decision would touch and how it would affect them all. No one would claim such knowledge, and it is therefore understandable why we so often feel anxious while making decisions and guilt over the results. Only a moment's honest reflection is needed to recognize that there is simply no way of knowing what course of action would truly be in one's best interest, and yet who has not at some moment in his life felt a gentle urging to take some action that he did not think was reasonable, but later events showed was exactly what he needed at the time. What I now see, and what anyone can discover for himself, is that this intuition, this quiet sense of direction, is always present and can be consulted directly. All that is required is the decision to make no further decisions. Once this is done, that which knows the answer will direct every aspect of one's life, appearing to become more clear in its instructions, as fear of its misuse lessens.